ultimately George Washington decided to um, just remain neutral on the French Revolution and just not get involved at all. And shortly after that happened, Thomas Jefferson resigned from his position as Secretary of State because he was just unhappy with George Washington's uh, decision about that, and also about just Washington seeming like he always takes Hamilton's side, and Jefferson opposes Hamilton. So this was kind of the final straw for him, and he decided to resign from his position in Washington's cabinet. And then afterwards, in 1794, Hamilton also resigns as Secretary of the Treasury, stating that he's having uh, uh, financial issues and that he needs to return home back to New York to find a better paying job to support his wife and his now 5 kids. So he takes a break from politics, but later he gets back involved. So in 1796, George Washington decides not to run for a third term. So instead, we have 2 Republican candidates, which is Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr, while John Adams is the Federalist candidate. And John Adams won the election, so he was made the second president of the United States. The reason why Alexander Hamilton decided not to run, it was said that he was at the time involved in an affair with another woman, and that he was being blackmailed by the husband of the woman and threatening him to expose the affair that he was having with his wife if he didn't pay him a year's worth of his salary, which is probably why he eventually resigned from his position, stating that he was having some financial problems. That's probably that has something to do with it. And this was known as the Reynolds Scandal. James Reynolds was the husband of Maria Reynolds, who was the woman that Alexander Hamilton was having the affair with. Um, and because Hamilton was paying him, it was also a controversy that people were saying that he was misusing his funds as the Secretary of the Treasury. Um, and Hamilton did admit to his affair. And personally, I think that that was a really um, good decision for him to make on that part. I mean, he didn't really have any other choice, but a lot of politicians, they just cover up their secrets and just take it to the grave with them, whereas he decided to just come out with it and just tell the truth. So, and his wife also stuck by with him the whole time, and even after the scandal. But this was very damaging, not only to his personal life, but his political career was essentially over. That just ended everything for him, unfortunately. Meanwhile, in Europe in 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte was conquering a lot of countries in Europe, and now he was coming for the United States. So he ordering to seize some American ships with British goods on it. And so, the United States, we thought we were going to get into another war, getting attacked again. So, we were concerned about that and what we should do about that because, like I said, we were still building our military up. Um, so, what George Washington decides to do, and he works with Hamilton in this, is they decide to build up America's military, train them or retrain them, and basically prepare their soldiers for a potential attack by Napoleon Bonaparte. And um, thankfully, nothing does happen because John Adams, he works out a peace deal without the knowledge of Alexander Hamilton. And so they also butted heads with that again because Hamilton was ready to engage in battle to defend the United States. But John Adams was able to resolve that without getting into another um, conflict between countries. And afterwards, George Washington died at the age of 67 from a throat infection. And of course, this uh, impacted Hamilton in a very negative way because they were very close. They had a very powerful bond for decades, and he was really affected by George Washington's death. In 1800, John Adams runs for a second presidential term, and uh, Hamilton, he attacks his campaign, and he's successful in ruining John Adams' re-election. And unfortunately, he also uh, takes down the whole Federalist Party because he's attacking a member of his own party, uh, which was kind of a mistake on his part. And the Federalist Party really never recovered. Was really never the same after that. And so Aaron Burr became the Republican candidate running against Thomas Jefferson, again, also Republican candidate. And there's a tie in the race, and the tie is broken by Alexander Hamilton, again, who ruins Aaron Burr's campaign by writing stuff about him and attacking him. And so uh, Burr loses his presidential bid, and eventually Jefferson is elected as third president of the United States, and Aaron Burr becomes the vice president. So Alexander Hamilton, he he hears about his son he hears about his son getting into a duel. His oldest son Philip, which is 19 at this time, from one of the his enemies' newspapers that they published. So word gets around to him. His son comes to him and asks him what he should do because basically some Republicans were talking bad about Alexander Hamilton, his dad, and he wanted some advice. And unfortunately, Hamilton gave him the wrong advice, saying that he should defend his honor, that he needs to deal with this as a man, and basically told him to go out and accept this duel with this other man who insulted his dad. So that's what Hamilton does. And tragically, that resulted in the death of his son, Philip. And he was obviously really broken about that. He was never the same after that. He just became really detached from society and from everything in general. And um, that was on November 23rd, 1801. And these types of duels are called um, an affair of honor. So basically, words or insults are exchanged between two men, and they resolve it through duels with a gun. Um, and usually nobody is killed, but sometimes they are, and they are illegal. But it's so common that it's just accepted. And ironically, Alexander Hamilton, 3 years after the death of his son in the duel, dies in the exact same manner with a similar gun that his son used um, when he was in a duel against Aaron Burr. And when they couldn't resolve that peacefully, when Aaron Burr demanded an apology of Alexander Hamilton, he refused to apologize. They just decided that they were going to have to do a duel. And tragically, that ended in the loss of Alexander Hamilton's life. Um, and I believe he was 49 years old, so he was still young. Uh, and yeah, he died July 11th, 1804. So the duel happened in Weehawken, New Jersey, and he was brought home where he died in New York, and that's where he was buried. And Aaron Burr was never charged with murder, but his whole political career, his whole reputation was ruined after that. So just some reflections and observations that I have um, with my research. At a young age, Alexander Hamilton was able to recognize problems with the current government and plan to solve them. Over his lifetime, he utilized his talent for writing and persuasion to his advantage, which helped him to not only succeed in getting the Constitution ratified, but also in defeating many of his political enemies. Through the years, Hamilton celebrated many impressive accomplishments that helped to shape our nation's government and economic system. But he also suffered two major losses, that of his oldest son and longtime friend, George Washington. Through their inseparable bond, Washington was able to provide the personal and public support that greatly influenced Hamilton's political career. Throughout his life, Hamilton made three destructive mistakes. One of them could have cost him his marriage, the second cost him the life of his oldest son, and the third, unfortunately, cost him his life. Despite these mistakes, only two main people remained faithful to Hamilton: his wife Eliza and George Washington. Although Washington appointed Hamilton as his Secretary of the Treasury, in a way, he also acted as his vice president. It is interesting to see the shift in views over time. How many protested then about states having too much power has now turned into a debate over federal power. I also wonder how our history would have been different had Aaron Burr and Hamilton never dueled and instead worked together to better the country. Or if the US had intervened in the French Revolution, would it have hurt or helped our ally? Or if Alexander Hamilton were elected as our country's first president rather than George Washington, would he have been more free to accomplish greater things? I believe if we can learn one lesson from Alexander Hamilton's life, it's that sometimes change is good, especially if it benefits the country and its people. If we can learn anything from his death, it's that great leaders can always fall victim to pride, which can lead to their self destruction. Nevertheless, Hamilton remained true to himself and his beliefs, even to death, and I believe this legacy will always outweigh his faults. Thank you.